Yeah.
Just kept spanking her, and she just, oh crap, we're live. Welcome everyone to the 10K Rum Podcast. My name is Amos Joseph. Of course, I'm joined by my co-host Brook Potter, who's in the UK. How's it going, Brook?
It's going well, Amos. Forgive the mess that's kind of, overtaken behind me. I've just recently joined the TV Owners Club. For the first time in the UK, I now own a 50-inch Philips Ambilight 4K TV, which I have no fucking use for because I don't watch TV at all, right? I barely even log into Netflix. But as the salesman once said, you can't have Netflix and chill without the Netflix. So I figure at least let me get that part handled, and I think everything will be a lot easier going forward. In other news, we had snow today. Like literally.
What?
We had fucking snow, bro. I actually filmed it on my phone. Like, it's bloody snowing.
Talk about a reversal.
Not even like, little bit like full on hailstorm type of snow, man. And that was very, very bizarre. But yeah, it's been an exciting day. I do apologize. I am going to have one more delivery. They canceled and stuff. So I've got some groceries that are coming in about an hour. So I'm going to have to hand it over to Amos for a couple minutes while that's going on. But besides that, how are you doing? Are you getting ready for the riots that are going to, spark in Minnesota pretty soon?
Pretty much what they're saying is you're going to have riots either way.
Yeah,
that's what it's looking like. It's funny you mentioned snow. Guess what I have on right now?
I have no
idea.
Air conditioning. Oh, it's so hot there. You actually have to put on the AC.
It's warm enough. And I don't like opening windows just for privacy. Like I usually just keep blinds and windows and stuff closed. So I have the AC on. I mean, look, the blinds are completely closed and it's this bright.
Cool. That's great.
There's obviously no snow, but it got so warm over the past couple of days that I had everything turned off, and I would come home and I'd still feel warm. So I'm like turning on the AC. I was like, geez. I mean, it's not on really strong, but it's just enough to kind of like keep it kind of nice.
Keep it cool.
Yeah, keep it cool. It's like it's set at 65.
Yeah, I'm about ready to put on a hoodie, and I'm like freezing my ass off all of a sudden again.
Oh, I'm in like t-shirt, shorts.
I was in a t-shirt and shorts yesterday. What the fuck happened, bro?
Sandals, just running around.
Oh, I'm still in my sandals, that's for sure. I should probably put on some socks.
I should be. I should be wearing. For those of you who actually haven't noticed, I don't know if anyone's joined us on Religion Zero who's watching the show too. So my knee is doing a lot better. My left knee.
Good news.
Actually, before we get into that real quick,
let's do a little housekeeping.
What?
Wash your balls, guys.
Wash your balls, guys.
Wash your balls.
If you want to support the show, which we, of course, always
Why wouldn't you want to support the show?
Don't support the show. You can subscribe to us. Leave a like, leave a comment. Check us out on all major podcasting platforms where all of our episodes are on. But you can also support the show through going to tacticalsoap.com using the coupon code 10KRUM to get 10% off, or go to subscribestar.com/shitload-preachers, where you can support the show directly for as little as $1 a month. Yeah, so do check all that out. All the links are, of course, below. And yeah, so
awesome.
I messed up I say mess up, but it's just a really big bruise, and it's spread all across my leg. Like there's all this area on my leg that's like red and blue, but there's no like pain there. So obviously it's just the pigment of the bruise is just spread across the leg. But it's starting to get better. The swelling has gone down quite a bit. It's kind of at that tipping point where things are going to start getting a lot better. Plus work gave me a day off yesterday.
Good.
So they said, we really want you to rest your leg. So, so that's like, so I'm going out wearing shorts and stuff, and I haven't been approached by anyone, but it's definitely like, all right, I probably should wear jeans when I go out. I don't want people like, what happened to your leg? But
dang.
it is so nice out that I'm like wearing this, t-shirt, short sleeve shirt, and just walking around, and it's very comfortable. Having the
Good.
AC on in the car.
Good. I mean, I would say if you do go out, get some fresh air into the house. So maybe like put some cracks in the window, at least so you don't die of the internal toxins. But get some sun, bro. Like seriously, get out there. You're looking like mighty pasty these days. You need a little color.
It's the light.
Of course it is.
I'm more Asian than you are, therefore I get just that little bit more tint than you do.
Yeah, just barely. I mean, I have been the few good days that we've had out here. I have been sitting in my window. I've taken some walks out, so I have a little bit of color going on. Not enough to really do anything, but hey, you got to get that vitamin D, man. We're fighting the COVID and everything else. You need that sunshine. Yeah. So as one doctor told me, he's like, there's no such thing as flu season. There's low vitamin D season. That's kind of the theory. So get out there, man. Definitely. Too? Oh, I lay down the vitamin D hard, long and hard. Definitely.
There wasn't too much going on.
There was nothing going on
There's a couple of interesting stories. It's just they're all very much in like developing stories. They're not really like, oh my gosh, there's all stuff happening. Which can be a good and a bad thing, I guess. Like, especially when you want to look at someone like, Biden and Kamala, like you kind of want them to do nothing, but then it's like, how much is happening behind closed doors kind of thing.
Like, yeah. It's bad if you have a podcast where you require political and social commentary to fill an hour and a half. That's when it's bad. So this is going to be one of those very interesting shows where we're flying by the seat of our pants to try and fill the time.
No, I pulled up a couple of things to look into. I mean, one of the things I'll start with kind of what's going on here in Minnesota. So we're on day 7 of the trial of Derek Chauvin. I haven't heard anything developing in the cities. Then again, I haven't been really close to that area. I mean, it is what it has been, which is, barbed wire, fencing, barriers, and stuff. Obviously, there's protests, but nothing is broken out yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. And that's kind of the thing is we're looking at it, and a lot of people pretty much agree, like, no matter what outcome to this, you're going to get protests.
I mean, the threats are already there.
Well, riots, really. I should be more clear.
Yeah, no matter which way it goes. In fact, one of these Black Lives activists basically said the cities will be on fire if the officer Chauvin is not convicted for the death of George Floyd. That's a direct threat. This is why you don't negotiate with terrorists. They are literally threatening to burn down the city if they don't get the result that they want. And I mean, you've been following the trial. I kind of been looking at some footnotes.
I listened to the first couple days a little bit. And a lot of it definitely got a little like lengthy. Like there was like a good hour, 2 hours of just interviewing the 911 dispatcher in the trial. There was like the pre-trial and stuff. And it's a lot to go through.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing a lot of different opinions and takes all over social media of people talking about it, and I'm kind of just taking the wait and see approach for the most part. I mean, there is a lot that is being revealed in the trial that I didn't know, and we haven't known this entire time, which is interesting to show. Like, it can be a very complex case to look into.
What didn't you know?
There was like, okay, so couple things were like the I can't breathe, how many times it was said by George Floyd.
Okay.
So they counted out how many times he actually said it, and then determining that he started saying "I can't breathe" from the initial encounter versus kind of the narrative that it only happened when the knee was on his neck.
I mean, that was common knowledge. That was part of the video when it first came out. So,
I mean, I'm coming from the stance of just very uninformed, we'll just say.
Okay, fair enough. So there's a lot of new information for you and kind of seeing it. Probably for most
like
people.
reviewing the entire video,
Yeah,
only a few people would have ever really done that, and just in general.
of course, because
even though it's out there, like
it's pushing a narrative, correct?
Yeah. So and then kind of the different argument styles that they're going about it. Like they talked about the Hennepin County coroner's report, like the
Toxicology.
versus when they were talking about, when they initially talked about it, they talked about how like how the person who trained that coroner looked at it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of muddying a bit the report on that to kind of make it look like something it really wasn't. But then they kind of circle the back around to kind of talk about, oh yeah, no, we identified all these things in his blood and, toxicology and stuff like that, and the exact cause of death. And then they threw out a bunch of medical terms to kind of really throw you off and like explain all this. And then other things too was, so the exact conditions leading up to the incident. So there was the CCTV footage of
you mean the fake dollars that he was using? I mean, this is very old news. I'm kind of surprised that you didn't hear.
No, the CCTV footage of him in Cup Foods.
Yeah. That was released.
The one where he took the banana.
Yeah, and he paid with the fake. This is. You really didn't look into this.
The exact exchange that happened between him and the owner of the store.
Into the car park, and he was there. All of that. That was all part of the report. Nobody reported on it.
That's the thing. So I'm coming at it from someone who was just kind of taking in whatever I was.
Oh, you trust the media? Oh,
no, not really. No, and
obviously you do.
It's not necessarily trusting the media narrative. It's more so just I really only ever got what the media kind of pushed out, and then I would look into things if I wanted to, but I didn't necessarily take it at face value, so to speak. And you know that.
Well, you did. Because you didn't.
I didn't take the narrative at face value. I would take the information as it came.
Okay. Did you see the part where they found out that they weren't actually lying on his neck? Where they had the body cam footage to show that he wasn't actually on the neck; he was on the guy's shoulder. Now there's question as to how long that was. Maybe he shifted, maybe he moved.
Yeah.
So that's something that came out. And in fact, the police chief came out and said from that footage, no, he wasn't on the guy's neck at all.
Oh, okay. That part I didn't know.
Yeah, that the footage came out late. So that was much after, but again, the media's pushing a narrative. We don't believe anything the media says, right? You guys haven't learned this lesson yet. The British have learned this since the revolution. There's no such thing as news. There's only bias and propaganda. So everything that the media is probably pushing is probably false. In fact, it's so bad. One of the medical officers came up and said one of the leading causes of why you should avoid fentanyl is asphyxiation, right? It pulls the oxygen out of your blood. Even though you're breathing, you have low oxygen levels because of the high dosage of fentanyl as well as all the others. Yeah. So you feel like you're choking.
And I've heard, I've heard about the whole like agitated state. Definitely exacerbates the entire situation.
The media comes out and they're so fixated on the outcome. Like the Wall Street Journal and the Forbes and stuff like that originally put out, medic in, the Chauvin trial says fentanyl can cause asphyxiation. But then when you clicked on the article, you can see that they've edited it and it says George Floyd died from, the guy on his neck. So Google, everybody is pretty much banked in on a position. Obviously, the cucks and the soys of Google think by appeasing the leftist mob, they're going to somehow prevent violence.
Right.
But in doing that, they're creating fake news. They're creating false narratives, and they're keeping people from really seeing the truth.
I'm still pretty settled my position somewhat, which is no one is perfect in this case. No one did everything right. Because I'm seeing on my feeds, people are saying like it doesn't matter if he had all this stuff in his system, the cop should have done what he did. And I said, okay, I see that, but it has to be balanced out by, as a cop, the training you follow, what you're doing, and people are gonna get mad, just doing his job, but he has to do his job. One point that was made that I thought was interesting to consider is just, okay, what's in his system, how that affects him. And I've heard plenty of people, both EMTs and cops, talking about dealing with individuals who are on very, we'll just say,
exotic
drugs.
Substances.
Yeah, illicit substances that are going to cause a very, whether it's violent or just a very just crazy response. And this is just one of those situations where it's like you cannot really anticipate anything that the person is going to do. You have to do to kind of like, get the person to a compliant state or something, get them cuffed, get them in the car, whatever. And from the footage, from everything that's going on, it's like no one's an angel in this. Because the narrative that's really being pushed is as if, like, George Floyd did absolutely nothing wrong. And then there's another side that kind of goes the route of, Chauvin did absolutely nothing wrong either. And it's like, I'm kind of in the middle where it's like, Chauvin did some things, Floyd did some things, and the whole thing is what it is. That's what's kind of led to, like, it's so easy to kind of pull at the narrative in either direction.
Right. I'm not sure where that brings you down on the court case. So what do you think is going to happen with the court case?
Yes, Chauvin still needs to, like, answer for what he did, but what was it? Manslaughter, I think, has to stick.
Yeah, well, involuntary manslaughter is probably as bad as it'll get.
Is there such a thing as voluntary manslaughter?
That would be murder 3 or 2 or 1.
Yeah.
That would be.
So I'm basically kind of between murder 3 and involuntary manslaughter, somewhere in there. I don't know if they're obviously not going to put the charges together or kind of make a middle ground, but that it all has to be revealed to balance that. What is exactly?
I think there's a very interesting caveat that came from this. I'm not entirely sure how a murder 3 and all these things work. Only the Americans do murder 1, 2, and 3. Every other country just does murder and manslaughter. So they really aren't. I don't fully understand how it goes. But apparently, one of the key witnesses, excuse me, one of the key witnesses that was called forth to all of the events was apparently might have been his dealer. Let's say, right? It's just, allegedly the dealer. And once the prosecution went back in with murder 3, this witness acquiesced and basically said, I'm pleading the 5th because he was possibly the dealer. And it's quite possible that, Floyd died from the drugs of which he was, sold. And under Minnesota law, if somebody dies from a substance of which you've sold them, you are liable for, charges.
Mm-hmm.
So originally he was going to come forward and testify, but the minute they put murder 3 back on the table, this guy basically pled the 5th. And he's saying, so again, that kind of points to, he knew that he was kind of on the hook for this. This could possibly land in his lap, Yeah. That story was buried. You'd never see that. You got to use DuckDuckGo. You're never going to see that on Google or Facebook.
Right.
But yeah, that's a real thing that happened. And that's important information, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Another, do you know, I don't think they're putting the other cops on trial, are they?
No, I don't believe so. I think they're on suspension.
That's one thing with how the narrative went that I can actually see at least some sense kind of came through. Because the other 3 guys, when you look at what they were doing in their specific situations, they have nothing to do with it. Because there were the two that were working with Derek, who didn't have any direct, they weren't applying any direct
involvement,
pressure or anything, trying to restrain George Floyd, because those two were probation or whatever it is, like first 90 days they're on the job. It was like the first week. And then there was the Asian cop who was standing up, kind of doing crowd control, watching for everyone, like looking around. So those guys, it makes sense. Like they were just there by circumstance, really.
Correct.
And Derek was the one who was in direct contact. And then, of course, there's the whole, like, the opening up of Derek and George knew each other before and all this stuff.
Yeah. There's some funny business with that as well.
Yeah, which is interesting. But, like, I'm seeing it as somewhere between that manslaughter and murder 3 charge. You've looked into, like, at least know somewhat of the difference between murder 1, 2, and 3, right?
I know murder 1 is intent. Well, all murder charges come down to intent. You need the intent.
Yeah, there's intent, and then there's even like premeditation.
Yeah. So, and then there's like conspiracy to commit murder. Something like that. But
I think it's like, like if you in the moment wanted to commit murder, like that would kind of be murder 2.
Kind of spontaneous loss of sanity and something.
Yeah, and then murder 3 is kind of this weird area just before involuntary, where it's like, I think it's like, I don't know if it's like murder by circumstance. Like you were in a situation and then it just happened there.
Right.
Like there was no instant between the decision and the action. It just kind of happened in the moment. Which is, I think, what they're trying to do with this is by saying, oh, because he knew him, it's murder 3.
Yeah.
So...
we'll see.
But yeah,
we'll see.
There's a lot they're going through every last bit.
Yeah.
And it's good that they're showing a lot of it on live feeds and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But you brought up a good point when you're talking about DuckDuckGo. So I saw this thing and I'm still trying to figure it out. You gave me a little bit of clarity on it. Justice Thomas was giving you said a dissenting opinion, was it? Yeah.
Yes.
On talking about basically social media companies and tech censorship as a whole, like trying to, for the possibility of regulating social media companies.
Yeah. So I think the Supreme Court has just slapped down Donald Trump's case regarding Twitter and his deplatforming as president of the United States.
Right.
Not because of any merits, but because it's moot at this point. Trump is not president. He's no longer has standing. They slapped it down. But in doing so, Justice Thomas, what's his name? Clarence Thomas made the statement that, the old ways of kind of regulating these industries cannot really apply under new technology. And we need to be examining maybe regulating these things in ways of like a carrier service, like an AT&T. But there is founding, right? I've quoted a case before where, well, first of all, the lower courts actually administered, first of all, that this is a public platform and any public figure, such as the president or the Senate or any of these people, cannot block anybody on their personal listing because it's a public platform. Now, when it comes to Trump, they're like, well, no, it's a private company. They could do what they want. So there is a clear disconnect between the realm of free speech. Hey, Karen, what's going on, Tim? Good to have you with us, bro.
It's that split we've talked about, kind of the difference between, publisher versus open platform. Correct. And how a lot of these companies have kind of danced between the two. And no one has really had the balls, whether it's the Supreme Court or, in Congress, to really pump out a law yet, at least to really
there is standing. There is a law. There is a Supreme Court decision. I can't remember what it is. I'll have to look it up in my past notes, that basically says that a private company cannot use, government protections and other types of influence to circumvent the Constitution. In other words, if a group of companies enjoy government protections, like the tech companies, they enjoy, the 230 protections from the state.
Yeah.
Senators, governors, and others can use that as leverage on the companies to get them to censor people they don't want or don't like. Basically saying, look, we can pull your protections if you don't do what we want.
And really, with all the funding that social media companies get from the US, like this is another argument, is if they're getting funding from the government, they are kind of like government agencies themselves. At least they have a sense of that. And so they then should be bound by, not discriminating.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then you have the whole monopoly argument. So in the case of Trump with Twitter, everybody's like, oh, well, this was like the primary place that you hear the president, right? If the president is in a field somewhere and he's talking and stuff like that, he could always go to another field, but at the time, Twitter was like the biggest de facto
and
place.
They go, make your own or Gab or whatever. It's like, that doesn't like, but a monopoly doesn't necessarily mean you have all of the field. It just means you have a massive majority of the field.
Yeah, enough of the field to gain control. And we saw that. We've seen past precedents with Microsoft and the whole browser issue. Netflix sued them back in the 90s. And it's not that Netflix wasn't being used. Oh, sorry, not Netflix. Netscape, yeah.
I was like,
so that was the browser. That was the browser wars. That was pre Netflix.
Yeah. I remember using Netscape.
Yeah, me too. My first browser was Netscape 1.0 or whatever it was at the time.
Was that like the Chrome of the day, like the alternative to Internet Explorer?
They were the first. Netscape. There was the ones from Unix, but Netscape was kind of the first Windows platform. And then Microsoft integrated the web browser into every other aspect of their operating system. So you can basically go into a file browser and then type in, a web address, and that file browser would now become a browser through Internet Explorer. So they basically crushed the competition. It's like nobody needed it. It was integrated into the operating system, et cetera, et cetera. Now they have none of it. I don't think Internet Explorer has any standard.
Well, no, it's called the Microsoft Edge, I think.
Yeah, I know they literally have one, but nobody uses it. Is kind of the point.
They use it to download Chrome
or whatever. What am I using? I'm using Brave. So, but to the point about censorship. Trump is a fantastic example of this. What's ended up happening now is because the Supreme Court has slapped down this ruling, and Justice Thomas has basically said, we have to look at this. And he's basically hinting like somebody bring a lawsuit basically showing that this is violating your First Amendment rights, and we will have to consider it as a carrier, like an AT&T phone call, rather than what is currently standing. He's opened the door for regulations of the tech companies by his dissenting opinion. Fascinating. About fucking time. It's so ridiculous, Amos. Remember, I shared an article with you last week about the masks, and it was a warning. Like, look, there are some masks coming out of China with this serial number,
graphene,
and they've found that there's particles of graphene in it. You can inhale it, and it can cause serious damage. That's like a serious public health, issue, right? And it's shared on this article. You couldn't post it to Facebook, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, neither could I. And I couldn't post it to Twitter. I couldn't post it to anywhere of like any major platform. That's whether it's true or not, even though it's been verified, I think, by BBC and what was it? It was the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation that put out the warning to begin with. This is official government recommendations. No, big tech is like, that's fake news. We're not gonna let people be warned about the quality of their masks. That's downright criminal, bro.
What's the other thing I was looking at here? Now this one's an interesting one. Arkansas. Have you heard what's going on there?
Yeah, you were sharing this with me just before we started. So
yeah. So There's a bill that was passed in the legislature in Arkansas that basically restricts minors access to transgender, any sort of transgender like surgery, therapy, stuff like that, or what they call gender affirming medical care.
Right,
So
like
it's
puberty
put to put a
blockers and
ban. So
stuff.
he vetoed it, which basically keeps that open to, which I don't know the exact what the exact laws are in Arkansas beforehand, but they wanted to put in a ban. The governor vetoed it. Now,
Wait. So they passed a ban on like child transitioning drugs, and the governor vetoed it, leaving it all kind of open to parents or something.
let me see. Governor of Arkansas.
Yeah, the transgender thing is so messy. Even our good friend Joe Rogan is just taking a whole bunch of heat again because he had the trans MMA fighter come on. I think that was anyway. They're screaming at Spotify again. They need to deplatform Joe Rogan. So yeah, there's no easy way out of the whole trans
he's a
issue
Republican
thing.
governor too.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, they have Republicans, and then they have Republicans in name only, so they're not always.
Yeah.
This or
So
I like
on
Diablo.
Monday. So yeah, it's literally yesterday.
Yeah.
He vetoed an anti-transgender healthcare bill that would have prohibited physicians in the state from providing gender-affirming procedures for trans people under 18. He killed the bill because it would be and is a vast government overreach, because it would have created new standards of legislative interference with physicians and parents as they deal with some of the most complex and sensitive matters, involving young people. He calls this a legislation the product of a culture war in America.
He's not wrong.
But his veto comes from what he even. Yeah,
is he
his
being
veto
libertarian,
comes even though he
leaving it up to
believed the bill
parents?
was well intended.
So is he basically saying leave it up to the parents? Don't tread on me, kind of thing.
Kind of looks like it, yeah.
I mean, some parents are just not really good at being parents, man.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like where is that line drawn between like parents, like, because I'll hear like the conservative side of parents should be better parents.
Yeah,
and then the left comes in and goes, no, the government needs to like stand in between the parents and the kids. And then this is kind of where that kind of, especially in this case, it's kind of intersecting. Like, okay, so where does the government step in with the parents? Do they?
Yeah.
Like, we have clear cases of like, if like a kid's getting, very clearly abused in some way, there's that. But with this, it's like, yeah. So he says, I'm hopeful, though, that my action will cause conservative Republican legislators to think through the issue again, hopefully come up with a more restrained approach that allows a thoughtful study of the science and ethics surrounding the issue before acting.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know his intent on that. This is one of those places I would kind of violate individual rights to protect children. I mean, y'all can't vote in the US until what, 18?
Correct.
Right. And you're not drafted until you're kind of 18. I would think over here it's in Wales it's 16. So I would kind of leave any of that kind of gender altering surgeries and puberty blockers to at least 16. I would say that would be the case.
Yeah, and this is what's tricky is because puberty is a thing that what's a thing, but it affects the decision making process too. Is because you've seen studies that talk about it, like a majority of kids who have sort of a subtle sense of like gender dysphoria will actually completely get over it by puberty.
Correct.
Now, not all, obviously. There's
absolutely
a amount of them that have that, and gender dysphoria is definitely a thing that needs to be considered. But it's then it comes to the next point. Okay, so then they get through puberty and they still have this. So what do you do then? And they say, you're saying 16, some are saying 18, but some would even go as far as saying like 25 because of prefrontal cortex development. Your brain doesn't actually fully develop until your mid-20s.
Fair enough.
Like there's that too. So But then but if you actually accept that premise, then you get a whole bunch of other problems.
Well, you should raise the voting age to 25.
Exactly. Then you can't make any decision until you're 25.
Wait, are you not allowed to drink in the US until you're 21? Is that different? Okay, so generally, I think that in the United States,
21 is in general. Yeah, there's exceptions, like if it's under parental guidance in your own home.
Right. Okay. Of course. Right. I would put it in that same category. I would say, you're making life decisions for yourself that are more permanent than getting drunk. I would kind of class it in that category. I'd say, I'm trying to be generous. I'd say 16 because, that's just, you're hopefully beyond puberty at least. And I think you'd probably weed out a lot of the trenders after puberty. And no guarantee, of course, but that would be my position.
Yeah, because I'm thinking somewhere in the middle where you could probably have, because obviously kids can't. Well, no, because obviously kids can't just get whatever procedure they want through a doctor. Like they need parental permission. Yeah. Because I was thinking about the whole, so there's exceptions to the 21-year-old rule with alcohol under parental guidance in your own home. So there's that. And I was thinking, could something similar be applied to this?
In a sense,
or is it really just, or would they rather really just go down the route of doctors just can't do anything till you're 18? Or
no, 16? It's medical. So I would kind of put it in the same. I mean, I don't. So like it would be the parent giving the child permission to take hormones, for instance. I think that should be held off, much later than kids and young teenagers really should be deciding. But yeah, I don't have a dog in this fight, right? It's a very complicated issue. And before people start storming my house and screaming, "Give us the monster," I'm fully on board with. I know very many trans people. I'm friends with them. All these different types of things.
Didn't you date one at one point?
I didn't date. Well, I went out with one that I didn't know was a trans, and
I'm just. What was it that there was that April Fool's you did last year?
Oh no, right? Yeah, there was an April Fool's joke that I did with a friend of mine. She's in Trinidad and Tobago actually, and yeah. I mean, people don't know, like and like one other friend knows, but I don't make that known, and generally people don't know that she's trans. I mean, she looks good. She looks good for everything that's going on.
And she was totally on board with the April Fool's joke and everything. It wasn't like
she did it again this year,
like a dunk on trans people or anything like that.
No. I was fine with it until it got out of hand, and my family starts calling me from Trinidad like, "Oh, congratulations," and all this shit. Right? That's when it got out of hand, right? But
that's when you've done it right, though.
Yeah. That's a good prank. But on this issue, she agreed with me that it's not for kids. It's not something for kids. And we are seeing the rise of the trans trenders, right? We're probably going to get nuked off of YouTube at any second now.
That's like every episode we do.
Yeah, like every episode is like we're going to get nuked off of YouTube. That's the thing. Like the trans population has always been a small percentage of the population, right? Mm-hmm. Just like homosexuals have always been a small percentage of the population. Now we're seeing like 10-15% of young kids are identifying as some kind of alphabet person. I
mean, right away it went from, I think the trans population was somewhere between 0.1 and 0.2% of the population. Yes. And then it like jumped to 3%.
Yeah.
And statistically it's just like,
that's an anomaly. That's completely outside the norms.
Saying, because I've heard the wording is, they don't, it's like, no, it's not that they don't deserve to exist. It's not that they have no place in society. It's when it suddenly becomes, and it's not like it's actively pushed, but it becomes like a social trend, really.
Yeah. It's a trend. It's a social mores at this point.
Like no one is forced to get a smartphone.
Correct.
But people feel, in order to fit in, to be part of the trend, to get a smartphone. Mm-hmm. And it's not even pressure. Some people kind of get touchy. Like it's not involuntary, whatever. It's how societies work with new
Yeah.
ideas, new things, the in thing. So for a lot of people, it became kind of this thing because there was a sense of status around it.
Correct.
Now, equally, of course, there are problems that just like any minority group, there is going to be a sense of marginalization and oppression that can happen in a social sense. I'm not denying
Yes.
that either, but I think it takes away from the more, and I don't want to be purity test this, but it kind of takes away from the people who are genuinely like dealing with this versus those who are just kind of being part of the trend.
Correct. Some of the loudest voices of the alphabet people are not even people involved in the alphabet community.
Yeah,
Right.
the people who are typically more people who have been in it sort of before it became a trend, tend to have more nuanced views about it. They're not just jumping down everyone's throat like
Correct.
you're transphobic if you don't want to like date or have sex with a trans person. They're kind of like no, like we get it, like some people are going to be into us, some people are not going to be into us.
If you're not into it, it's fine with most trans people if that's not what you're into.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been to Thailand, and if the girl comes up to you and be like, papi, katoy, yeah, happy, and you be just like, nah, I'm good. They're not offended by that. They're like, okay, cool. Some people are just not into that. But not these days. If you're not into that, you're transphobic and all these other things, usually by non-participating alphabet people who, they don't even know what's going on, and they're ready to condemn you. And the actual community is like, please stop trying to defend us. You're doing more harm to us than good.
It's honestly like I think we could probably kind of take it into, because we haven't talked about have we talked about the Asian thing?
The Asian thing,
anti-Asian violence thing.
We've had a couple discussions. If you want to get back into it, it's always spicy.
I am tired of having the narrative be we have to defend these people and they have to stand up for themselves. Not that I worded that incorrectly. They have to actively start protesting and having activism and all this stuff.
The white saviors coming to save the yellow man. That kind of thing.
I even saw like so I'll watch like TikTok and stuff, and there was this there's some like Asian creators on there, and they're putting out some funny stuff because it's like they do a lot of like cross-cultural kind of humor, like trying to be an American and Chinese at the same time, so it's funny. And but then they'll like kind of slip in a couple of these videos talking about like how all the racism to deal with, and I'm like, there's a way I think you can really put that in, make it fun and enjoyable, people, and also kind of show people like, hey, I experienced some stuff too. But sometimes it just inevitably turns into we're gonna rub it in your face. White supremacy, racism, that whole thing, the push of like, I'm just such an oppressed person. And it's like, yes and no. I mean, minority groups inevitably get some sort of push against them. There's going to be racism out there. But trying to make it like a way of claiming victimhood, victim status,
it's a bit of a stretch.
Like they wonder, like a lot. There's a struggle with Asians because Asian cultures in general don't like victimhood.
Correct. They're proud people, generally speaking.
I mean, you could throw in. I mean, you're looking at the rape of Nanking. You're looking at the Japanese occupation of Taiwan. You're looking at what was it? I mean, the stuff they did in Manchuria. What was that, Unit 731 or whatever it was?
I don't know the details, but I know
there was this one unit that Japan had that basically did some very screwed up experiments on Chinese prisoners.
Right.
But I mean, that really just shows, how bad tribalism can take over even among Asians. It's not just Asians as a whole. Like, it's we're not just this nebulous group of Asians. We have history of killing each other. Like,
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree.
So then there's that. So they try to like make it into this whole like, oh, we need more Asian, activists. And I've talked about it before. Like there was a video I did talking about how like, why is it like, how do Asians subtly contribute to white supremacy? And it's like because we don't protest as much. We don't have as much activists.
I mean, there've been a couple events recently that have really dismantled the white supremacy argument against Asian communities. And again, in the UK, Asian means something different. Well, not different, but it's more expanded to include all Middle Eastern people as well. So
South Asian, Middle East, stuff like that.
Middle East, yeah, that kind of thing. So we had recently the Uber driver, Middle Eastern gentleman, that was murdered by the two black girls, and crickets on that incident. Then there was the incident of the lady in San Francisco. She was basically held outside the car as it was driving off, and she was flung from the car. I think it was Latino or possibly, but it wasn't white people. And the statistics don't bear it out, right? I mean, there is interracial violence on all groups and all these different types of things. But in the US, the white on Asian violence, like actual physical violence, is minuscule. Not saying it doesn't exist, and of course it should be addressed, but if you really care about the Asian community, you're not really looking in the right place.
Well, I pointed to this and to say is like it's purely it's not like when you make it a race issue, it gets messy. You need to address it as what it is. It's a violence issue as a result of sort of the sometimes unavoidable tribalism that happens in high population areas.
Completely agree.
You look at how neighborhoods are in inner cities, and you see where then you of course try to put an overlay of like, where's all the violence happening? Oh, it's right at the borders between these
different groups.
Different groups.
Correct.
And that's just how that is. Does that mean, is it necessarily racism? Not really, I think. I think it's more, I mean, there is that part of it, but then if you try to address it in that way, that could get equally as messy.
Correct.
But you just got to look at inner cities in general.
Yeah, and a lot of it is gang related, right? And it's not to say that the Asians don't have like the triad and the Yakuza from Japan, and they have organized crime, and they're all fighting for territory as well. Just like
then you have to address what leads to that.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm just saying, I'm not saying it's all one thing. There is definitely crime within every community and all these different types of things, and they are jostling for position and power and territory and all these other things. Completely agree that is a factor. But yeah, the Asian community in the US it's not liked, but the hypocrisy of the left on this issue is kind of stark, in the sense like we had Harvard put out a statement about how they're anti, they have the anti-Asian hate and all that, they're against it and all this other types of stuff. All at the same time, they're still discriminating against Asians on the SAT scores by having, like, that is systematic racism that the left screams about. That is it.
What was it, like 400 points? You have to get 400 more points on an SAT or something to basically compete with other candidates.
Correct. To get into Harvard. So all of this virtue signaling.
I think for the longest time, they just basically, like, Harvard was like either 25 or 30, maybe more. Like it was a big percentage Asian.
Yeah. So all of this virtue signaling nonsense that's going on, it's just exposing the hypocrisy of the left. These people really don't care about the issue. They only care about it if the perpetrator is white and they get to blame white people for something.
Yeah. And
that's not gonna win That's not going to win people over, especially in the Asian community, because they know who the perpetrators against them are, right? The people who are actually like doing crimes and robbing stores and doing all this other types of things. The Asian community is struggling to find like Asian people to come out and condemn white supremacy. Not that they don't have them. They have funky Asians coming out and basically saying, oh, you're white man evil and all these different types of things. Fine. But that is a minority opinion.
Yeah.
In the larger sphere.
The big thing that I basically have noticed, and this is where that white savior thing comes in, is most of the time, at least 90% of the time, I see it brought up on social media. It's white people.
Yes. Not Asians.
And, well, I can't kind of go, hey.
They have internalized racism or whatever, whatever the case might be.
Yeah. Like, I could talk to my siblings and be like, do you experience racism? And they're going to say yes. Mm-hmm. So how do you deal with it? Well, I just don't let it bother me.
Yeah.
And now, granted, we're also half white, so people might say, we can get away with something. But I look at it and I go, it's like the majority of the people who are talking about it are white people. And it really comes down to really just most issues.
Middle upper class white suburbia.
Anytime a racial issue comes up,
yeah,
it's mostly white people.
Yeah.
I remember even you remember Dave Chappelle's special where he talks about Juicy Smouye.
Yeah.
And he goes, and this all happened, and black people were strangely quiet, like. And that's how it is. It's like when these issues come up, we're like, all right. One of our own got caught up in something, whether it's black people, Asian people, Mexicans, whatever whatever group you want to throw out there.
Yes.
Okay, all right, let's look at what happened here. Okay, so he was doing this, yeah, he was doing that. This is what he says happened. Okay, he's on his own, or we're gonna stand with him because this is bullshit.
Yeah.
Most of the time, it's just because I don't hear from other Asians talking about Asian violence. I usually don't really see much from black people in my Facebook, who are going on about a lot of these issues either. Around, whether it's, George Floyd or some of these other these people who have BLM tends to kind of bring up. Not saying it never happens. I've definitely seen it where it's
yeah. Even
very
I have
clear. Like if they say something, it's very clear and like, yeah, this is wrong. This was not right. This is a complete breach of this. Fine.
Correct.
But it's like it's usually there's a more measured response from the group in question versus white people who are just jumping the gun everywhere. Like we're gonna save every other minority in the country because. White saviors. It's hey Jasper, good to have you, bro. Hope you're doing well. And really, I've seen a lot of comedians even like being like it has got to be one of the most patronizing things to know someone is offended on your behalf.
Yeah. I mean,
I saw it. Someone was like, "Oh, I was listening to the radio, and the radio host said, something about Asians, and I just couldn't believe he said that." And I said, and I looked at this person and what they posted. And I said, Did you have an Asian friend in the car? Were they offended? You're not Asian, are you? Oh, well, no. And I said, so why do you care?
No, it's not why do you care so much? Like you could care.
Yeah. No. Yeah, that's a better way of saying. Why do you care so much?
But why are you going to like hang your hat on this kind of like recently in the UK we had one of these African actors, and we had a report come out in the UK where look, the UK is not racist. They're classist, right? Either you're part of the echelon, the aristocracy, or you're not. Not particularly racist. There's like a full-on report that came out. Anyway. COVID happens. Boom. COVID hits. And of course, it's affecting people of color a lot more than it's affecting, every other kind of ethnic group and so forth in the country. And they're going to, there was a whole BBC article and they did like a documentary and stuff like that. And it's a black actor who's doing the whole show and screaming about oppression in the UK when this guy's well-established actor, millions of dollars, living in a posh part of London. He's talking to like an East Indian doctor and an East Indian nurse, top of her field, and they're trying to spin this story like, yeah, we're so oppressed. And it's kind of like, so the doctor that's making like £250,000 a year is going to talk about how racist this country is, and she's at like the top of her field, right? And this actor who, you know, he started his career in the UK making millions of dollars, made it to the United States and like had a breakout in the television series. I mean, what are you thinking? Like, these people have no connection to reality.
Exactly.
It kind of goes back to like the Meghan Markle and Prince Harry interview with Oprah about how oppressed they are. It's like a billionaire and a couple millionaires in royalty are screaming about how oppressed they are. It's like, you have no connection to the real world. It's just laughable.
This is kind of the decadence problem. I don't know if you've heard the study that basically like, so the West, people in the West, in the first world, I think it's like in America, we have like 3.5 times the levels of like anxiety and mental health issues.
Correct.
Than that of Africa.
Yes.
Like African
Africans
nations.
Are very happy people, man. They're, you know, brilliantly happy.
And because there's a whole lot going on. So it's like when you got so when you see these, you know, billionaires and millionaires on TV going about how they're oppressed, it's like, man, like, and objectively, they're not oppressed. However, subjectively, in their own mind, the level of depression and mental health that is just deteriorating is somehow worse than people who are objectively in squalor in other parts of the world.
Just because you're in squalor doesn't mean that you're depressed and other. Some of those are the most happiest people. Like when you went to Thailand and you experienced like what real poverty was like.
Mm-hmm.
But those people were fantastically generous. You know, they had their family, they were all together, they were knit together. Didn't matter that they didn't have a lot of money. They were willing to share. They obviously housed you and the guys. And so, yeah, having wealth obviously does not equal happiness. I think we've established that. A lot of people think that it will. But what you're looking for is meaning in life. And because the West is basically bubble wrapped the entire world. I mean, we've conquered the world in Western civilization. They're making shit up, right? They're trying to find a mountain.
There's really nothing better to do but try to figure out, like, you know, like we can be so happy that we can actually afford, like, we are so well off, we can afford to be more depressed than everyone else in the world.
Yeah,
that's like the epitome of, I think, if you want to say privilege or just wealth, is just you have so much that you can afford to be sad.
Yeah.
And actually more sad than the rest of the world.
On behalf of people that you're not even affiliated with.
On behalf of people, really in general.
Yeah.
It's just,
I mean, not to say, look, there are people who are legitimately depressed, and we're not knocking those guys.
Yeah.
We're not knocking those guys. We're not saying everybody in the West is depressed, is faking it. But this group of outrage culture, oppression Olympics, trying to win every angle, sort of not part of any group, but loudest on Twitter sphere people, those people are full of shit.
I think it goes further. It's not that it's like when you said it, we're not saying
Jasper. Hey, that's my friend Jasper is a very good example. He's got legitimate issues. He's on the Facebook. He just put a message there.
Yeah.
Jasper, he's struggling right now. He's been through a hell of a lot. Hey, bro, just send him some love out to you, man. He's a real person dealing with something. He's not fighting up all this other kind of,
but the thing is it's not, we're not saying like people are necessarily faking. I think a majority actually is genuine.
Oh yeah.
But it comes from a place that we have complete control over. So I think most mental health deterioration in the US, perfectly genuine.
Sure.
Because it points to a bigger problem, which is from our lack of meaning.
Yes.
So when you look at your SJW types, even some of your boomer types who are just freaking out over everything about society. Boomers are saying the West is falling apart. I want the good old days. You got the left that's like, oh my gosh, patriarchy and white supremacy everywhere. I think a lot of it, it is observable and objective mental health issues,
Yes.
regardless of if their claims to those things that make them depressed are genuine or not.
Correct.
Like, they're genuinely having mental health issues, but it's because of all these things that are sort of creeping in, so to speak, they're allowing to govern their worldview.
I mean, I don't know if you've done therapy, but a very big part of therapy is recognizing what you don't have control over and kind of letting it go.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have talked about this, and I definitely have. I haven't gone to therapy, but I have developed over the years, just before I even really thought much about mental health, of just a sense of what I have control over and what I don't.
Correct. And a therapist will tell you, right? You need to set your mind free from the things that you're out of control of, right? So, a very common trope is if somebody's suffering from anxiety, maybe they're looking too far ahead into the future, or if it's depression, you might be looking too far ahead, far in the past, or whatever the case is. This is not a therapy session. I'm just saying as kind of the thing. But the whole premise is like live in the here and now, deal with what you can deal with, work with what you have now, what you have control over. The entire SJW movement is the complete opposite of that. Right? You're trying to take control of whole swaths of society, not only in the here and now, but in the past, because, original sin, slavery, all of that compassed together, and you're trying to bear that on your shoulders. You go fucking nuts. Yeah. So, there's no doubt that there's mental health issues.
That's honestly... That's a big part of why Clean Your Room from Jordan Peterson made sense, because that's perfectly acceptable to control is your room.
Yeah, find the heaviest thing, lift it and move it, and at least you're not useless. You were able to lift it and move it. That, as simple as that was, that resonated with a lot of men and a lot of young boys. It's one of the most depressed demographics in the West is like millennial women. I don't know if you've been following the disaster that's going on in the dating and the whole thing. But again, feminism needing a boogeyman creates some ethereal thing called the patriarchy, telling women they could freeze their eggs and, give your life to Google as an executive, and you could have children in your 50s and all this other kinds of stuff. One of the biggest consumers of mental health drugs and opioids and SSRIs is millennial women, right? They're like chalking it back like crazy.
Who's second? What, millennial men?
Yeah, millennial men come right after, but I think that's a testosterone issue, too much soy. But yeah, it's women. There's a gap between the mental happiness of women and men, and it has to do with, again, women seeking purpose, which for a large part includes having kids and these other things. That's been thrown under the bus. That's been discouraged. All of this other kinds of stuff. And women right now are miserable. Meaningless sex is it's pointless. It's destroying them. Then, of course, as you and I know, in the red pill community, it devalues these women when they've had more miles run through them than here to the moon. All of this kind of stuff. It's destroying them. And they know it. They know what's going on.
Yeah, it kind of just hurts everyone in general, because
men too.
Because a society where for so much can be within a society where so much mobility, so much success, and just purpose can be derived. You can do so much.
Yeah,
we managed to actually be one of the least purpose-driven people.
Correct.
A lot of that innovation, I think that's probably why a lot of that innovation, a lot of the growth, a lot of what has made America, excel is going to start going backwards.
Probably.
Or I should go backwards, slow down.
Well, yeah, I would agree with that. And you look at it, your biggest innovators, I think in the last 20 years have been immigrants, right? Like Elon Musk is, he's of South African descent. What's his name? Gupta of Google is East Indian. I mean, before that, yes, you had Bill Gates and Wozniak and Steve Jobs, but the people who are kind of running it right now are immigrants. And to be fair, that kind of pioneering spirit, you see that with a lot of immigrants. They're willing to traverse the deserts and other things to try and build the American dream. You guys have kind of got it, and you guys kind of got fucking lazy, right? It's kind of like, all right, we've made it. We've landed on Plymouth Rock, and, we're good. We don't need anything else. But yeah, I completely agree that, finding purpose and meaning. And the problem is the world tries to give us that in a sense of, oh, you got to make money. You got to, work in 9-to-5 jobs, give 40 years to the company. And then you get a gold watch and a fuck you as they kick you out the door. And then you retire and, you pop out 2.2 kids and a dog. And that's not how we find meaning, right? This cookie cutter image that they're trying to push on us is not helping. And we've lost touch with the spirit. I'm not trying to get religious, but our spiritual sense of actually finding, a higher purpose and these other things. It doesn't have to be religion, but some people are given to charity and art and these other things. All of that's discouraged. So yeah, the West is looking pretty grim. And the reason the East is rising is because they're hungry for it. They've only just got it. They've kind of they basically copied you guys and they've reached to the success that they have now. But you're also seeing it in places like Japan, where there's a whole society of men that don't go outside, right? As what are they called? I can't remember what they're called. No, I can't remember. And the women too, that just social anxiety. They're stuck indoors. They play video games, watch porn, living with their parents, and they're just disconnected from society. And there's like a subculture of that's kind of come up. That's could be our future, for fuck's sake.
Yeah. Well, that got real grim.
If anybody knows in the comments, my delivery has just showed up.
Just now?
The van has just pulled up. Anybody in the comments, tell me what it is. They have a magazine for these people. It's like I can't remember, something with H. But yeah, it's something
Hentai.
like that. What's that?
Hentai.
No, not quite. All right, I've got to run. You can take it for about 5-10 minutes.
Yes.
I'll be right back.
All right. Man, you better hurry up. I'm looking in the chat here. Grass eaters. Sorry, I'm just reading in the chat here for everyone who's joining in. Herbivore men. That's probably not it. Yeah, we'll have to touch base with Brook when he gets back to really get into that. But another thing I wanted to kind of get into a little bit was what's kind of been going on. Let's see here. I'm trying to find a grass eaters, herbivore men. I mean that's definitely. I mean that's probably the more the term that they're using for them versus actually being herbivore men. Because I know in Japanese communities, like in society, they don't necessarily have like vegan types, as far as I've heard, or even like carnivore like you have in the U.S. They're fairly well balanced with their diet, with rice and fish and veggies and stuff. But I'm not sure. It's probably more as like a slang term to call them grass eaters or herbivore men, as a way of like, since it could be the connotation is that they're weak vegan type, whereas they're probably not actually. It's just more of the culture, the demeanor that they carry that tends to make them sound like that. So I'll definitely have to look into that a little bit more if when Brook comes back, seeing if he knows much about that. Yeah, more of a slang term. It's like it's like when we call people soy boys. Um, it's more it's more of like the culture and the demeanor, the subculture of like soy products, lower testosterone, sort of beta behavior versus like literal soy types. Um, yeah, I'll have to Brian. I'll have to look into that at some other point to see if that's how much like where does it all lead with that. Um, but while we're waiting for Brooke here, I was gonna kind of look into. Let's see. Oh, wonder if no, let's not go into that one. Because we're talking about tech censorship, and one of the things that's kind of I think is equally important in tech censorship is privacy. I was just looking at on the news part on Twitter, and it was talking about how Tim Cook, who was the CEO of Apple, took over for Steve Jobs, talking about how one of the major issues, if not the main issue of the 21st century, is privacy. And anyone who's kind of followed with what Apple has been doing lately, they've kind of been, we'll just say, in conflict. Hey.
The guy's like, am I at the right place? Yes, you're at the right place. Oh, let me get the stuff. Hurry up and get the stuff.
I was just touching on Tim Cook was in a podcast recently talking about how privacy is the number one issue. It's one of the top issues of the 21st century. And I was just going to go into a little bit about how, like, when he was talking about, I know Apple and the government have kind of butt heads on privacy, because Apple refuses to specifically create a backdoor.
Yes.
For government agencies to sort of get into phones. Basically, it forces the government to have to get direct permission from the person in question. You can't just slip in.
Which is good, which is what you'd want.
Yeah. I mean, that's been going on for a while now.
Unfortunately,
which is one of the few things that Apple is done a really good job at compared to other companies, is because while they're doing all this, their phones, their computers are still way too expensive.
No, I agree. No, it's what I'm terrified of. And I saw this coming out from Microsoft, Google, and who are the phone makers? Samsung, not Samsung. What's another Google that makes a phone, right?
Yeah.
And then who? Pixel. There's another phone company. I can't remember. Nokia. That was it. And they are addressing that very point about privacy, where they want to have like a hardwired identification linked to your MAC address, which is basically your hardware identification address on your communications, completely eradicating any kind of privacy on the internet. So yeah, that is, who the fuck is asking for that? Like, what makes you think this is a good idea? That you will have no anonymity. They can always track you back to whoever it is. I mean, there was even a push to use a passport to get on Facebook. Did you see that? Some fucking idiot.
I mean, I'll look at, like, I do know some people who. So some people have like sock accounts, or alternate accounts, and if Facebook catches wind of this and it's basically tags your IP address and starts doing this, it could require you for some identification to prove you are who you are.
Yeah, I get that. They want to make ID mandatory to sign into Facebook. So there's some leftist communist that's pushing.
That's a bit different.
The party. Yeah, I agree. I know about the sock account thing and Twitter. You know, many people have been caught on Twitter trying to switch from one account to the other. They sell themselves out. But yeah, they want to eradicate anonymity from the internet, and that is very scary. You know,
Yeah.
you have a social credit score in China. They want you. We already do. We already have an internet credit score, which is probably why our podcast on YouTube isn't going anywhere. But they're that's what they're pushing for.
Not yet.
Not yet. No, we're big on our podcast downloads, which we appreciate every one of you. Come and join the channel, guys.
Yeah. So, what else was I gonna?
So
Canada.
just very quickly, right? Your most elected president and vice president, Kamala Harris, travels to Oakland, California on Monday, on her, which is her hometown. 4 people showed up. The most voted for president and vice president of the United States in the history of the world gets 4 visitors in her hometown. Good for her. She's good for her. She's gonna be president soon, so I guess it doesn't matter.
Have you been keeping up in what's been going on with the possible unionization in Alabama with Amazon?
Oh, yes, I did hear some rumblings about this because there was a big story about how you guys have to piss in. Did I just? Oh shit! Sorry. We'll cut that. We'll cut that from the show. But yeah, people have to like piss in the car, and they have to like wear diapers to shit and all this other kinds of stuff. So yeah, there's like a outcry now for like workers' rights and all this other stuff at Amazon.
Yeah, that's the thing is, let me just look at this here. Yeah, there's been complaints going back as far as 2012 and 2014 that basically warehouse workers. So yeah, sorry for everyone who heard that. Basically, so during COVID, I basically had worked for an Amazon warehouse for a couple months. So that's why I said that. So
yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely a pretty interesting job, and I've heard a lot of complaints. Like they basically work them so much that what's happened is there've been employees will get caught with like piss bottles and stuff.
Yeah.
So
I heard a story of like somebody had a shit bag, and it like burst onto a couple of packages and. I mean, somebody did like an investigative report, and they really dug out some of the horror stories. So I don't know how true all of that is, but yeah,
I saw a TikTok, which is it was like Jeff Bezos report showing up at a random warehouse, and it was like, I'm not happy with these results. What we're 99.998% efficient. Yes, and you're not 99.999% efficient. Well, we're already, we have to at least take those few minutes to, piss in a bottle. He goes, and you think I care why? So you want us to piss on the floor? Whatever you can do to get that extra 0.001%.
Jesus Christ.
But yeah, it's like I had heard about this happening at the warehouse and such, but I once I read this article recently, I was like, oh, so this is happening everywhere. It's happening. It's happened with warehouses. It's happened with drivers. It's happened with. I think that's really the only two. Like anywhere else,
the biggest things. Yeah.
Yeah. Anywhere else, like you have people.
They don't really have stores.
Yeah, there are Amazon stores.
But I mean, not enough to unionize, kind of thing.
Correct. I actually found one when I was visiting the Mall of America.
Oh, cool!
There is an Amazon store.
Yeah, no,
it's basically
and you could like
it's
walk
all
out.
trending items 4 stars and up.
Right. Yeah. I think I remember that. I think there's no cashier. You just walk out, and like the RFID chips will bill your Amazon account.
That's a different kind of store.
Okay. Well,
so there's
that's what they're going for.
That's called the Amazon Go, I believe.
Yeah.
These are stores that actually have cashiers.
Oh, cool.
So they're testing out different types of stores. The new like smart store like that is a whole nother level that is fairly new. But Yeah, I mean, this is what has happened is like, because under standard, labor law, like there is, bathroom breaks and such like that. But for some reason, they've just been caught, not following all those rules. Like employees are entitled to breaks, like there's laws and everything for that. But the workload always exceeds a normal shift's time.
Right.
So you're required to basically be hyper efficient and somehow still put in a break.
Right. Which basically means
So
you don't
so
put
wait,
in
so
the
you've got an
work.
8-hour shift, right?
Yeah.
You've got 10 hours of work.
Yeah.
So you got to be ahead and have a little time for a break
Yes.
if you were to follow the rules.
Yes. Which means you
So
gotta make up that time.
because really you should have 7.5 hours of work to have that half-hour break.
Yeah.
And if you're even just a little bit efficient, you can maybe take another break or two in there.
Right. But that requires being ridiculously fast, you're ridiculously efficient to make up that time, basically.
Right. And that's kind of the thing with the warehouses, the drivers, and just which is the majority of Amazon employees.
Yeah.
So when these articles are coming out and everything, it's shedding a bigger light. It's really not to like shed a light and say, oh, look at these disgusting employees. It's really to shed a light on Amazon and go, hey, you're working these people too hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I mean, I'm not opposed to unions as long as it's voluntary.
And this is the problem with unions is I think.
I mean, they eventually destroy the company that they're formed in, which is not a good outcome. But sometimes it's warranted, man.
There should be. I mean, this is the thing: is most jobs now have had enough labor laws to sort of keep them fair,
protected,
mostly fair.
Sure.
And jobs that are still unionized are basically just. I mean, they're really no different than just bureaucracies within a company.
Yes.
Oh, we report to the union, and the union just kind of, like everything, like it becomes a propaganda thing. So I worked a job once that had a union, and union dues were $50 a month, I think, or 25. It was some amount, but it was basically like it's taken out, and then I would get like, I don't know if this is just the culture. But the managers and just, upper management people would every now and then I ask a question regarding work or something, pay or disciplinary action stuff. Oh, yeah, you have this because of the union. Right. Oh, we all get a raise thanks to the union. Like it seemed like propaganda. Like,
well, that's what union. It is.
The union protects you.
Oh,
and it's like, literally, it was like, okay, this sort of collective, the union.
I mean, that's straight out of the Communist Handbook, right? The party gave us, these crumbs. The party gave us this. As I say, I have no problem with voluntary unions. I know there's some places in the US where you pay union dues whether you're part of the union or not, and I don't agree with that. Unions are kind of a bygone era sort of thing. Most work right now is very specialized. You can't really form a union. And I agree, they ultimately destroy whatever business, they're a part of. I mean, a very large reason why Detroit, which was the automaking, heart of the United States, is no longer making cars, is because of the auto union basically pricing themselves out of the market. And it's now cheaper to go to China and Japan and Mexico. But for sometimes, I don't have any sympathy for Amazon and Jeff Bezos. Let me just say that. If the union wants to go in there as a cancer and destroy the whole thing, more fucking power to them as far as I'm concerned. I don't know. Oh man, we're so getting zucked on this episode.
Okay.
Have you seen that your former Fed chair, Janet Yellen, she's calling for a global minimum corporation tax?
What?
Yeah, so Janet Yellen, who is she? Wasn't she the what was she? Can't remember. She's basically gone, and part of Biden's international outreach is to get all these first world countries and others to agree to a minimum corporation tax around the world to try and stave off the race to the bottom, basically. So, for instance, out in Ireland, Republic of Ireland, I think they're at like very low. They're like at 12% or something along those lines, which is why Facebook and all these big tech companies are incorporated in Ireland. The UK right now is at 20%. If you're a big company, they've just, because of COVID, they bumped up like a 25% if you're like a really big company. But everybody knows if you want the jobs to come in, you gotta entice these companies by low taxes, good incentives and all this other stuff. But because the global money supply is kind of running dry and they don't have enough tax farming to really make up the revenue, they're trying to form a cartel to stave off the competition of tax revenue.
Jeez.
That's basically what she's doing, right? So this is Biden's plan, is to unite the world on probably a fucking 50% tax rate or whatever the fuck it is, to try and stem the bleeding. But yeah, it's pretty messed up, man.
I think we can kind of take this in for a bit of a landing now.
Yeah, we're calling it.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is kind of one of those
going on, man. There's absolutely nothing.
That's why I said, will 2021 save us? Because we've had so much going on
before.
Really. Like, yeah, I thought Corona would really like slow things down, but no, it's actually kind of made things worse in a lot of ways. Government overreach, instability. A lot of it I kind of figured was somewhat predictable. Like, lockdowns, disease, stuff like this is going to cause civil unrest. Yeah, pretty much what happened. A lot of things. And then, of course, now government kind of does a bunch of sneaky stuff.
Yep.
Because they can basically throw a bunch of, fear mongering to kind of cover up. So,
I mean, you saw like Dr. Fauci was basically caught, got his nuts caught in a vice when they talked about Texas reopening, and the cases are going down in Texas. The cases have been going down in Florida, even though they're like fully open. And he didn't he's been pushing for more draconian lockdowns and triple up mask and wear a diaper on your face and all this shit. And he basically had no answers to why these states that aren't doing any of that are doing so well, while the other states that seem to be, locking down and, killing the economy, their cases are through the roof. So poor Fauci.
More paid than the president.
Yeah. And what is it? Your president makes like what, 400,000 a year?
400,000. He makes like 420.
He's part of the 1%.
I mean, the president doesn't make just the 400,000.
No. Of course, there are other perks, including the White House. So, and
they're getting paid for a whole bunch of other things, and not to mention everything they're going to get paid for after the
all the speaking
if he makes it up.
Yeah, I don't think Biden's library is going to be very big. Let's just say
but
Biden's
already a multimillionaire.
Yeah, probably. He's been 80 or 120 years in Congress or in the Senate. So let's hope he's made some money.
Real quick on that one. So, you know what Snopes did about that?
I saw that they basically said it was false and then admitted it was true.
No. Well, this is what I heard Snopes only ever said about it.
Yeah.
He did say that.
Yes.
That's all they said.
Yeah,
they didn't say what he said, whether he said was true or not. They just said he did say it.
So yeah, the meter of Snopes, it goes from like truth to not truth or mostly true or whatever. They said false. But then in the article, it actually said, no, he actually did say it. So.
Oh. I mean, yeah. So what he said was false. No, but what I heard was really funny was Snopes has a separate article that is just, did he say this or not?
Right.
Because Republicans are trying to pick at this, and it's like, no, he did say it.
Yeah.
We just have a separate article to say whether or not that's true.
Yeah. So Snopes is fucking garbage.
It's like saying, did Trump say grab him by the pussy? Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Now, did he actually do this? Well, we don't know. Like, it's just there's separate.
It was a
things.
hypothetical. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like.
No,
this is Snopes' way of fact checking people and circumventing like actually saying anything truthful. So they have to separate it. Like, okay, so he did say it. That's true.
Yes.
And then they hope you don't look any further. Like, did what he say actually is it truthful? Yeah.
Correct. I mean, that's what the media does. It's like, okay, there's a burning fire, and Amos, you run in there very bravely and save a bunch of kittens, right? Cool. So the fact checkers on the article, because they don't like our podcast very much, would be, did Amos really run into a burning building to save a bunch of kittens while wearing some Nike Satan shoes? False. He did run into the building. He did save the kittens, but he was actually wearing some Adidas sneakers. That's how the fucking fact checkers
you said
work.
Adidas?
Yeah. We still have that as a brand out here. I'm just
we call it Adidas.
Well, yeah, we would say Adidas. All day I dream about sex. So, but that is how fact checking works on social media.
Yeah.
They
or Snopes would just say, yes, there was a fire, and yes, someone did save the kittens.
And his name was Amos, and it is the guy we're talking about. But we're not going to talk about that.
But the way
yeah. He didn't save all the kittens. He only saved the ones in the building. I mean, just fucking bullshit.
And really, he didn't save parts of that house or that building that were on fire. Those parts were not on fire. Yeah, otherwise, how would he have saved them?
Yeah, exactly. It's just, you have to be so smart to understand the bullshit that's coming out from and how they phrase things. So even the whole COVID thing is like, oh yeah, deaths died with COVID or died from COVID or died COVID related. None of those mean any of the same things. No, that doesn't necessarily mean people have died with or from the disease.
I loved how South Park did it. Oh, it's COVID death.
COVID related.
Oh yeah. They shot Token. Oh, it's COVID related.
Yeah. For those who don't know, the pandemic special, the police burst into the classroom, fire off a bunch of rounds. They shoot Token, who's like the token black kid. And they basically put it down in the report that it was COVID related, another death from COVID.
No, he didn't die, but it was a COVID related. It was a COVID related injury.
Yeah,
because it was like, well, because we're in quarantine, and the cops are here, and COVID is essentially the root cause of why all this is happening. So it's COVID related.
Yeah.
So, anyways, before we get going,
before we
once
land
again, of course,
yes,
wash your balls.
Wash your balls.
Tactical Sub. If you want to go to Tactical Sub, use the coupon code 10KRUM. You get 10% off, and of course, part of that goes to supporting the show. Or, of course, as always, check out our Subscribe Star. Go to subscribestar.com/Shitler-Preachers, where you can support the show for as little as $1 a month to basically support the show directly. Of course, check us out on all major podcasting platforms. That's basically Spotify, Pandora, Apple iTunes, Google Play, Amazon.
And leave us a review, guys. The review does help if you can, and share it with somebody that that might be interested in our kind of content as well.
Yep. And of course, check us out on our YouTube channel here. Subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, check out all the previous episodes. So, of course, we do thank everyone for joining us. We will, of course, be back on next Tuesday at the same time.
Thanks for watching, everyone.